Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning in Calgary, Alberta. It is Tuesday morning, June the 22nd. I'm happy to be here. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. This is one child abuse survivor to another, and I'm just happy to be able to continue to do these shows. And we're looking at emotional abuse this week. I just wanted to cover a few things that I had found over the last 6 months or so regarding emotional abuse and just how serious it really is, and take a look at it some more, see what else we can find, and bring it out on the table here, because it's very important that people understand the issues surrounding emotional abuse. Parents, it's good for parents to know not to abuse their children emotionally or in any other way. And if you've survived emotional abuse, then you know how extremely horrifying it really is, as it doesn't leave physical scars. It leaves a lot of emotional problems and psychological problems, and it's really hard to cope with. So that's why I want to continue talking about this. So, I'm not a professional therapist or counselor. I don't hold any counseling certificates at all. I'm just a person who brings pay to do my own blog talk show, really just to bring information out to people. And, so you have to listen at your own discretion, especially, survivors of abuse, right? We all heal and are healing at different stages on our journey. So it's really important for people to know just how far along in your healing you really are. And then, if the topic actually makes you uncomfortable, then you need to turn it off, right? It's just not worth it, right? You have to know where you're at in your healing process and your journey. And some things will bother people and trigger people. I know, as a survivor of child abuse, I know this. And so, if you just find that the information is just too sensitive and it's just really bothering you, you have to listen at your own discretion and turn it off, right? And I would ask all people under the age of 18, young children especially, to have someone listen to the show with them, and just to make sure it's something that they should be listening to, because the topics of abuse obviously are not talked about very often out in the mainstream. So you might not have heard a lot about abuse. It could be upsetting to really young people. They wouldn't maybe know a lot about what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm just asking people, children, to make sure you get someone to listen to the show with you, say your parents or grandparent or someone who's older, an adult or a teacher, coach, or somebody, someone who can listen to a show and see if it's something that you should be listening to. And also make sure that you get the information on how to stay safe online, because that's very important. You could save your life, and you could save your friends' lives, if you know that information and you pass it on to your friends, because internet safety is a huge issue, right? Especially regarding children. And so you want to make sure that you keep yourself safe and make sure that someone knows what you're doing online and, who you're chatting with, and never, ever give away any personal information about yourself. Don't use your name, your real name. Don't tell people where you live or give them your address or your phone number. Don't tell them what school you go to. Don't even tell them what town you live in. Make sure that you don't give out any person's personal information, and be really careful when you're in chat rooms, and really watch out who you're talking to, because there's a lot of really bad, sick people out there who are trying to get a hold of children and will do anything that they can to do this. So you have to make sure that you keep yourself safe and get the information regarding child internet safety, and make sure that you do have someone listen to these shows with you, so that they can tell you whether or not you should be listening to it, right? So important. So we're going to get right into this article here, and we started yesterday morning looking at it. It's called Emotional Abuse. It's from information from the National Clearinghouse on Family Violence. And I actually found this article on Health Canada's website, www.phac-aspc.gc.ca, and Child Abuse Prevention Resources. That's where I found this article at, the Public Health Agency of Canada. And so we were looking at it. What is emotional abuse yesterday? It's rejecting, degrading, terrorizing, isolating, and corrupting or exploiting, denying emotional responsiveness. We looked at all those different types of emotional abuse, right? And we also looked at how widespread it is, right? And also we started looking in at facts to consider, that they have done a lot of studies, and one study that they looked at, emotionally abused children in infancy, and then again during their preschool years, consistently they were found to be angry, uncooperative, unattached to their primary caregiver, The children also lacked creativity, persistence, and enthusiasm because of the emotional abuse that they suffered as really young babies or really young children in preschool years. Children who experience rejection are more likely to be than accepted children to exhibit hostility, aggressive or passive-aggressive behavior, and to be extremely dependent, to have negative opinions of themselves and their abilities, and to be emotionally unstable or unresponsive, and have a negative perception of the world around them. And that's only, I guess, normal and natural if you grow up being emotionally abused, as I know firsthand what that's like. Parental verbal aggression, for example, yelling, insulting, or slamming doors, silent treatment, stuff like that, really has serious consequences to children, right? It says children who experience these forms of abuse demonstrate higher rates of physical aggressiveness, delinquency, and interpersonal problems than other children. And that's the way I grew up. You know, a lot of violence, as well as a lot of yelling and slamming doors and breaking dishes, throwing things, knocking furniture over, people getting hurt in my home, and it was really bad. You know, a bad place to grow up. So, you know, it left me with a lot of emotional difficulties as a young child and as a young person. And it's, you know, I'm now in my 40s, and it's taken me a long time to get where I'm at today. And that's why I wish I would have reached out a lot sooner. And so that's why I'm doing these shows, you know, to encourage people, you know, to make sure you do reach out, no matter how you do reach out. If you're a survivor of child abuse, to make sure that you do get some help, whether it's group support, online group support, if you want to remain anonymous, right? And so many times abuse survivors have to remain anonymous due to, you know, their life being threatened or whatnot. If the abuser is still alive, there's many reasons why people remain silent. And, you know, that's the whole issue. So you can join some of these groups online for online support anonymously. You have to give the moderator or the person who's running the actual website your name and email address, but everyone else in the group doesn't need to know your real name. So it's great. And, you know, just reach out and make sure you get some help, whether it's a therapist or counselor. I've talked to some therapists. I don't have any a therapist or a counselor, but over the last 6 months or so, 7 months, I've actually had the pleasure and the honor of talking to some therapists and counselors and whatnot just by doing these blog talk shows, and it's been awesome to talk to them. You know, I never realized that they were out to help people. I always believed that they were out to hurt people because of what my parents told me, and so because our parents were told to go get court-ordered counseling, and they didn't do it. They went twice, and then we left the country, and so after the CPS, or Child Protective Services, stepped in because my brother went to school, and they noticed that he had been abused, and so he said he was afraid to go home, afraid for his life, and so they brought in all the Child Protective Services people, and they ordered, my parents had to go to court, and they were ordered to go to counseling. But they didn't remove us from the home, and there were 6 children living in the home at the time, and under the age of 16 years old. So, it's really unfortunate that this sort of thing happens, and the abuse just continued on, right? And so that's why it's so important for people, if you've been told all your life that therapists and counselors are just out to hurt you, and that other people are always just going to hurt you, and that's all, quite often mentally ill people will say things like that. My parents were both mentally ill, so they had a lot of mental problems and emotional problems. So, they warped us as young people. So we just, when you grow up listening to all that, you develop these tendencies to feel and think a certain way, right? So I have talked to some awesome counselors and therapists over a period of time here and realized that, hey, these guys are really out to help people, and I think that's awesome. So reach out. Make sure that you do reach out and get some help, and don't suffer in silence, right? That's the big issue here. So we'll continue on with this article where I left off, and that was that children whose parents are additionally physically abusive are even more likely to experience such difficulties. That's the whole issue. It's bad enough when children are emotionally and verbally abused, but if they're physically abused as well, there's obviously emotional abuse is there too. So that's the whole issue. Emotional abuse is actually goes right along and coincides with any other form of abuse, whether it's physical or sexual or, whatever. It's all, or neglect. Even neglect it's all the same. Maltreatment. It's like there will be emotional abuse in all instances. It's just it's just that sometimes there won't be physical abuse, but the whole issue is when there's both, it's really bad. And then in my case, that's the case. There was a lot of physical abuse as well as emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. So it really hammers it home, when your parents are abusing you physically, and then you're also experiencing a lot of verbal insults and emotional abuse, psychological abuse. It really messes with your head as well as your whole psyche. And then when you're being sort of beaten into submission or beaten just to control you, and then they're using the verbal and psychological means to control you as well, or just to make you feel really bad, it does really hurt. And so it's hard to get over that stuff, and I know I experienced it, and it's very, very difficult. But I had to realize as an adult, later on, I've done a lot of work in the last 3 years, and especially the last year, that it wasn't my fault, and that I didn't deserve that, and that I do count, I do matter. I started getting the will to live and to fight to live, right? So that's what I would hope for everyone out there who's experienced this kind of stuff, right? And so we'll continue on with this article. It's page 4 of this actual article, and I'll give you that link again. That is www.phac-aspc.gc.ca. And it's emotional abuse, that's what it's called. Children who see or hear their mothers being abused are victims of emotional abuse. Growing up in such an environment is terrifying and severely affects a child's psychological and social development. Male children may learn to model violent behavior, while female children may learn that being abused is a normal part of relationships. This contributes to the intergenerational cycle of violence. So that's passing on the cycle of violence, right? When children grow up and see, even if they're not being physically abused themselves, if they grow up and witness a lot of domestic violence between their parents and violence in the home, quite often they will carry that on into their own lives. When if they have children, they might pass it on. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you don't allow that to happen. If you're a parent and you're living in a domestic violence or abusive situation, you've got to think about your children, and you have to think about yourself, and you have to get yourself to safety and get your children to safety, right? Because it's so important. Nobody deserves to be treated like that or growing up around that stuff, right? And we know that it happens all the time. It's happening everywhere, all around the world. So what would exclude North America? It's rampant in North America as well. So that's why it's a huge issue to make sure you get some help. And it says many women in physically abusive relationships feel that the emotional abuse is more severely debilitating than the physical abuse in the relationship. And I've heard that, and actually kind of even agree with it. Physical abuse and scars, if you survive it and live through it, you might have you might have lots of physical ailments depending on the type of abuse, right? But the whole issue is what really hurts is what's going on in your heart. And that's what your spirit, you know what I mean? And that's what, I always felt really broken, that my spirit had been killed or had left my body or something. I just felt very dead, you know what I mean? And a lot of, that was so painful, you know what I mean? To be growing up as a small child and feeling that I was already dead. I was just walking on the planet, but I was dead spiritually, and I remember feeling that way at about 10 years old. So, and I kept on feeling that way until I got way older. So let me tell you, it's really, really hard to get over that stuff. I think that my spirit really I didn't feel my spirit come alive again until I actually started healing, and that was just about 3 years ago. So, I went from the age of 10 to 41. So I went for 31 years walking on the planet as a dead person. So really, that's bad, and it's not cool. And if you've experienced that, you want to make sure you get some help, right? Because I wish that I did. I really wish that I would have reached out and started seeking some help, right? I was just suffering in silence, like so many survivors will do, and for so many reasons, you know what I mean? And finally I thought, no, I'm coming forward because truth is everything. And for my brother's sake, they died and went to their grave, and people just thought that they were losers, and that because they were drug users, and one killed himself and the other one took his life, and one died of an overdose. But he had always been doing drugs since he was a young kid, and he was always overdosing, so it was just quite common. But one day he finally overdosed for the last time, and he knew what he was doing. It was a slow death, right? It was very slow suicide is what it was. And my other brother killed himself, committed suicide, right? And so the two brothers, the family kind of looked down on them. Everybody looked down on them and thought they were just losers because their lives were just such a mess as adults, right? But then nobody would take a look at what happened to them when they were young and growing up. And I remember, I was in the home, but I have very cognitive memories of how they were treated. And I can tell you what happened to them, and I thought, man, I have to be a voice for my brothers. I have to be a voice for all survivors out there who cannot raise their voice, and for whatever reason, you know what I mean? And for these children out here who cannot raise their voices. And for the victims who have died and didn't make it and were killed at the hands of their parents and caregivers, I want to be a voice for them too. And so that's the whole issue, it's so wrong, abuse, and we did not deserve it. And I'm glad to be able to stand up. I think that's a big part of my healing, is that I'm finally saying, no, I don't care who knew my parents and loved my parents, because my parents had a lot of support. They were loved by many people. And because they were good to other people. They were just not good to each other. They were very nice to other people, and they had lots of friends, and they were very nice to their friends, but they weren't good to their people, to their family. They weren't good to their children. They would go home, and they would start their crap all over again. So even if we went out for a nice evening out, to people's homes, it'd be great for a couple hours until we went back home, you know what I mean? And then the garbage would start all over again. And that's why, it just makes me kind of angry, because my parents had way more support than their children did. And even knowing the situation that my brothers, were in, and that the abuse had been reported, and that my brothers were abused physically, and that then my mom went on to abuse me physically and verbally and every other way, right? Our whole family, right? We were all treated really badly. And so my parents had a lot of support. People loved them dearly, and they still do. They can't even hardly get a grip on what I'm doing and what I'm coming out with, which is the truth. And that's the case in many cases. The survivors of abuse are not believed because abusers are very manipulative. My parents were very manipulative. They knew how to gain support and sympathy, and they knew how to get people to want to help them more than their own children. So that's the whole issue. People should have taken a look at what was going on and saw what was going on, and they should have opened up their eyes, but they didn't. All because they wanted my parents to come to their barbecue every summer, because for some reason they liked my parents. My parents were good to other people's children, and that might be why. Because my parents loved other people's children, and then when they would get home, they would tell us that they hated us, and my mom would slap me around, and my dad would, just push me away or grab me by my throat, or, they were very stupid, sick people. I'm sorry, but that's the truth, and the truth is the truth. They would call everyone in the family names, depending on who came in the room. You just had to kind of come in the room and open up your mouth, and you could just hear a barrage of insults or whatever, because my parents were using us as punching bags and for their own miserable lives. You know what I mean? So we were just there so they could take their anger out on us. You know what I mean? And then of course the next time we went to a barbecue, everything's great. So we managed to pull this off our whole entire lives. And, they knew that there was an intervention done by Child Protective Services, but nobody cared. And we were left in the home. So that's the whole issue, right? And so that's the whole thing. It's really bad. And I know so many survivors out there, who are in the same boat, and whose families, there's no way for them to really get restitution, and no one believes them and stuff and like that. And, truth is truth, and truth is everything. So I thought, I'm coming forward, and I just don't care who likes it in my family, whether they like it or not, because it doesn't matter to me that some people would be like, well, we loved your parents. Well, I loved my parents too, but what they did was wrong. And you know what I mean? I thought I hated my parents. I really wanted to hate them, and I did hate them for a little while, I think, when I was young, because I wanted to. Specifically just wanted to hate them. And so I did for a little while. Then I realized, that I loved them very much, and that's why I didn't want to be removed from the home. The whole issue is that we all should have been removed from the home, and my parents should have got some help. But they didn't, so that's the whole issue. So that's why it's so important that we stop child abuse and find ways to help this situation. You know what I mean? The programs that will work to help children who have been abused to get some help, and also because there's so many rolling out every day. So many child abuse cases that are being brought up in court, and these people are being convicted. It's absolutely horrible what's happening. So we really need to help these kids out here today, and that's what I hope everybody will do, get involved, and stop this mess and this craziness. There are ways to do it, and we can work with them, with children. And just getting the word out, spreading awareness and promoting awareness and education really is the number one priority for all governments regarding child abuse, because it brings awareness before the abuse actually happens. It might help parents to think, hey, I don't want to abuse my child, how am I going to get some help? Might help someone who knows of a child being abused to look for the signs and symptoms and report it. So that's the whole issue. Primary prevention is really the number one way to go. Because otherwise then it's just the aftermath, picking up the pieces and trying to help a child who's already been abused. So we want to stop child abuse before it happens, right? We want to stop the abuse before it happens. So that's the whole issue with primary prevention, and that's why I'm glad to be a part of it. But the whole issue is that it's really sad growing up abused, and I know I'm so glad to be able to be a voice. Anybody who would like to be on my show, I know I have a guest coming on my show pretty soon, and we also do on Dreamcatchers as well. We have some guests lined up, and these are survivors, and it's just going to be awesome, absolutely awesome. I will announce that when we set a date. I'll announce who it is. But this is the whole issue, right? There's so many survivors. I have a lot of survivor friends. I've had a lot of survivor friends my whole entire lifetime, because people tend to navigate towards each other if you've been abused, if you notice that. Growing up, I hung around with a lot of kids who were living in homes like mine, very similar to mine, or they were worse than mine. I mean, I had friends whose homes were worse than mine, and I knew that. I felt so bad for them, you know what I mean? And the whole issue is that these people, a lot of them are, who knows if they're even alive today, and you know what I mean? They were so mistreated so badly, and we all headed on the road to destruction, and we knew what we were doing. And so, it's so sad. I would hope that they had reached out and got some help, and that's what my hope is, because I don't know where most of them are nowadays. Some of them are dead, I know that. Murdered. 2 of them were murdered, separate instances, but one by in a domestic violence situation, and another friend of mine was shot down in his driveway due to a drug deal gone bad. So that's the whole issue, right? A lot of my friends were abused and then ended up having these horrible lives. My brothers, I mean, I saw this stuff my whole life, you know what I mean? And I thought, I don't want to live my whole entire life like this with all this garbage and violence and crap, I just want to have a good life, right? So I demand, and I actually am very particular who I let into my life. I don't take abuse from anyone. As an adult, I just do not want to be re-victimized, so I don't allow myself to be. I treat people with respect, and so I get respect back. If someone tries to think that they're going to say something or do something abusive to me, I just shut them out of my life completely. I have no room for abuse in my life anymore, and I refuse to take it. So as an adult, I had to put my foot down and say no. I want to have a good life, so I'm going to be very particular who I let into my life. And the people that come into my life will either have to treat me right, or they can just disappear. They can go away, because I have no room in my life for any more abuse. And that's what I would hope that anybody who's listening to this program, who is a survivor of child abuse, make sure you're very particular about who you associate with. Hang around with good people and people that are going to treat you right, and people that are going to help you to get where you need to go in your life, which is to heal and to move forward, and to have a good life, right? I wish my brothers would have done that. They'd probably still be here today, had they reached out and got some help, and and instead of just suffering along in silence in their own miserable worlds of pain and misery. I mean, we witnessed it, and it's just so sad to see people go that way, and that's why I hope people will reach out and get some help. So we'll continue on with this article here. It says, repeated verbal abuse, such as blaming, ridiculing, insulting, swearing, yelling, and humiliating, has long-term negative effects on a woman's self-esteem and contributes to feelings of uselessness, worthlessness, and self-blame. And this is for children, too. Blaming, ridiculing, insulting, swearing, yelling, and humiliating. If parents do that to their children, or a caregiver does that to their child, it does have long-term effects on and affects their self-esteem and their feelings of uselessness, worthlessness, and self-blame. And that's, I know that firsthand, what that's like, you know what I mean? And so that's the whole issue. Emotional abuse is very, very hard to overcome. It's very hard to deal with. And so, it's not unlike physical abuse, that once the abuse is done, you might have some problems later on because of it. You know what I mean? Most people do, actually, and I know I do. But the whole issue is that's not the stuff that bothers me. I can deal with the physical pain, but it is the pain that's inside of my heart. That's the one that was actually killing me. So even though I was in a lot of physical pain 3 or 4 years ago, sitting around on the couch thinking I should just end my life, and what why bother to go on, and was I ever going to be out of this pain? Well, it wasn't the physical pain I was experiencing that I was trying to get out of. It was the pain that was going on in my heart from the emotional and psychological damage that was done. The verbal abuse, I just, you know what I mean, that's so much worse to me than, and psychological damage was so much worse to me than the physical abuse. I have a lot of physical problems and physical issues, you know, that have been plaguing me since I was a child. But the thing is that I just live with it, and that's what you have to do. But the thing is and you know, go get checkups and get some help, right? Eventually I'll be on some major pain pills, I know that. But the problem being is I'm just dealing with that right now. But what really hurts is the emotional abuse, you know. And I was sitting there ready to end my life. I was thinking, you know, I didn't actually have a plan to, but I was thinking, oh, I should, because I'm never going to be out of this pain, and who could take this pain away? And I want people to see this pain. And that's when I actually, at that point, decided to stop doing that, and I realized that I wanted to win this fight. And I said, wait a minute, no. I want to win this fight. I'm not going to let my parents win this fight. If I kill myself, or if I commit suicide, or if I self-injure, who wins? My parents. I can't let my parents win. They already won with my brothers, because my brothers are dead, and you know, they're just gone. And they won with my other family members who refused to stand up for themselves and to say that it was wrong and back up my brothers who are dead because of this whole situation. You know what I mean? And to back me up, knowing what my mom did to me. You know, not one of them will back me up on it. And they know what she did to me. So this is the whole issue, right? They know how I was treated, and they don't care. Because they abused their own child. Well, not one of my sisters did not abuse her child. My sister broke the cycle. But my brother, I don't think that he did, and he didn't treat his son very well. And my other sister, who had 2 sons, did not treat her family very well, even including her husband. She was a very abusive woman, and you know, she passed on the cycle. But my sister broke the cycle. My other sister, who has 1 daughter, she treated her daughter very well, and I think she did a great job bringing her up. And she brought her up with love and concern, care, you know, all the good stuff, right? None of the bad stuff. So that's just so awesome. But this is the whole issue. They don't support the fact that that what my mom did to me was extremely damaging, and you know, there was an intervention done by a family when I was 13 and a half, and thank God, because who knows? I mean, my mom, you know, one more beating like that, and it could have just killed me. You know what I mean? It might have. You know, who knows? So my mom had to straighten up, because she knew all of a sudden that this family was looking in and watching the situation, and that they were going to report it. You know what I mean? So that's the whole issue. And they should have probably reported it, but I told them not to. So that's the whole issue. It's something that the psychological issues regarding that really had everything to do with the fact that my mom was always threatening to throw me out. Out of 7 children, I was the only one that she didn't want, because I was born out of rape. You know, my father, it was marital rape, but the thing is she hated me and did not want me, and was miserable that I actually lived and survived. You know what I mean? Because I was born like almost 3 months early, pre-me, because she was so sick, and I think it's because she was trying to kill me. And so, you know, she was trying to cause me to miscarry. And because she didn't want me, because I was a rape child. See, I mean, this is just sick and sad and wrong. And of course, everybody loves my dad, you know. And there's so many people that support my parents, and they were really sick, you know. And it's a shame, and that's why I hope that they do get my book and read my book and see just exactly what was going on there, and then apologize, because they do owe me an apology big time, and the rest of my family. But anyway, if they ever apologize, whatever, because I'm going on with my life. But this is the whole issue, right? I did not want to be removed from the home, because I was really wanting to be, I couldn't believe that I would be the only one out of 7 children that she would throw out. And so I wanted to stay in the home. I was like, no, you can't throw me away. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of psychological issues regarding why people don't, what happens to children, right? And the more you look at it, the more you see the real problems surrounding it. And that's why we have to stop child abuse, right? So we have about a minute left. We'll continue on with this tomorrow morning. I just hope you all have a great day. I'll be back on tonight with Donna Shearer, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time at www.blogtalkradio.com. facebook.com/Dreamcatchers. We'll be on for an hour tonight and probably bring in some headlines, and who knows what Donna's got in store, because she always got something interesting she wants to talk about, and she's an amazing lady. And we'll continue on tonight, and then tomorrow morning back on again, same time, One Child to be a Survivor to Another. If you need something, get a hold of me here on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook, wherever you can find me, and get me a message. If you need anything, contact a Dreamcatchers for Abused Children volunteer. If you have any you need resources or information, and just make sure you know the signs and symptoms and report the abuse, right? Make sure you do know that. And also, just make sure that you reach out and keep reaching out, get some help, and keep that hope alive, right? That's so important. I hope you have a great day, and I thank you so much for tuning in to all my shows, and we'll be talking to you real soon. And make sure you visit our website at the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Visit our website at www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.